My Lords, I stand with some trepidation on this one, but I'll give it a go of saying that I have some reservations about this series of amendments. On Amendment 12, I actually have a lot of sympathy with the more transparency as a general principle, but I would like to just ask the Baroness Northover and Baroness Walmsley how we deal with a dangerous precedent of commercial confidentiality and sensitivities in terms of any company, in terms of what can be revealed, what can't be revealed. It's one thing asking for information, mandating it is a whole different ballgame, and data is something which many companies hold close to themselves because they are private entities, they are allowed to, it is a legal thing to do, and there are reasons beyond malevolent reasons why that might occur. I'm particularly concerned, though, about Amendments 192 and 194. As the Noble Lord Earl Russell noted, tobacco companies already pay, are responsible for substantial duties that are collected. I'm not so sure that polluter pays is a principle that I entirely agree with or at least I think it's quite complicated because it sounds virtuous. In some instances I might well support it, but when I was reading these amendments, and maybe it's because of my left-wing Marxist background, all I kept thinking was, oh my God, this is a kind of legal new form of wealth distribution by force. I mean, it felt to me as though what we were saying was forget economic growth. We're just going to take more from legal companies, but it's all right because these are evil companies. One of the things that I recognised in the words that the Noble Lord Earl Russell used in terms of his more specific what the money should be used for amendments, if I can put it that way, was an argument that I came across from Cancer Research, and Cancer Research have been very helpful in their briefings on this bill, and in many instances I agree with what they're putting forward. But anyway, in this instance they said, if I can quote, "At a time when funding for public health initiatives is limited, this proposal raises money without directly costing the taxpayer. Given the current economic challenges, this presents an opportunity for the government to act decisively should it choose to seize it." And I just kept thinking this is a way of avoiding crises in public health or in the NHS by simply not resolving what should be health service, an adequate health service for everyone, but by turning to the private companies instead and trying to compensate for that. And I think it's a dangerous precedent. I don't think private companies should let the state off the hook for what they should be doing, because those services, those public health services, should be provided by the state regardless. And the fact that there's an economic crisis at the moment can't be just kind of meted out on companies that we don't like. Now, I realise that tobacco companies have for some time been treated as especially evil and malevolent and harmful. But actually, if you enter into other debates and read the briefings of other lobbying groups on other issues, you will also hear similar moralistic arguments used about sugary foods, about junk foods, alcohol, gambling, in fact even fossil fuels. I read a fascinating paper the other day which basically said that fossil fuels were killing us all, they should be closed down and so on, and that's kind of the language that's used. And I do worry in terms therefore of setting some kind of precedent of a moralised hierarchy of what legislators decide are evil companies and who gets to decide it, and then a kind of punishment that's meted out. I say this because I was a bit disturbed the other day, by the way, and I'll just mention this briefly, when there was some mention of a report by KPMG, and the report and the data in that report was dismissed as being a report that was produced for Philip Morris, the tobacco company, as though that somehow closed down any possibility of a discussion. Once you said that, you could kind of laugh it off. And I thought that that sense of all you have to do is to say a tobacco company's name and you can kind of close down valuable information is quite dangerous. And I thought it was particularly unfair on KPMG. Now, I'm not necessarily a great fan of the big four, accountancy firms, but they are certainly have some reputation, and to kind of just write them off as somehow in bed with the kind of evil Philip Morris so we could take no notice of what they do seemed a little unfair. And I thought, if that were the case, has the government let KPMG know that that's its view of them, especially because KPMG, as I understand it, are a supplier to the government, focusing on civil service training and economic matters. It might well be that they have a case to answer on those things, but I don't think that they should be written off as a company because they have done some work for Philip Morris, and neither do I think it's appropriate that this discussion that we're having should always assume that everything that a tobacco company says or does is evil because of the nature of the product, which is harmful, which does contribute to cancer in many people. I know that. But if this government believes that they are so uniquely evil that they are killing the population, then they should have the courage of the conviction, make them illegal, ban them, and not take their taxes, and not have it always.